Welcome to episode 8 of the React 2021 series. So if you look down in the description, you'll find a link to the GitHub repo that I'm using for this. Episode 7 was the end of the last one, so if you want the starter code for this, you can go to that, but I've added a few things in here. This is going to be episode 8 that we're using right now, the branch, episode 8. So what I want to do in this branch is I want to talk about refactoring, do a little bit of cleanup of the code, and do some planning ahead. Part of the process of learning how to use a framework is understanding how you're going to organize all these different parts, how you're going to organize your code, how you need to think about what you're building. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to talk about where we're headed over the next few videos and show you how I'm going to plan for that code and do a bit of a setup for that. I want to refactor my code that I have right now and get a little bit more code reuse out of this. So we have right now these components on our page. So there's the app, that's the parent. Then there's a header, and at the same level as header, we have search bar, search history, and search results. Now, I want to take what I'm building right here and sort of refactor this. You can see both components. It's a UL with a bunch of list items inside them. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to use a common list component. I'm going to build a little list component and a list item component. And then I'm going to have search history and search results both use the same component and just feed them the data that from the search history and the search results, feed the data down to the list item so it can generate things, and they'll all be styled using the CSS that's in that common component. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where we're going to have some details here as well. So I can click on one of these items and have something loaded here. Or if I'm in this list, the search history, I want to be able to click on one of these items and have the old search run. So a bunch of things to plan ahead for. So let's jump back into the code. And we're in our app component here. Now, what I did add to the start was I did create a list and a list item. Now, these are just shells right now. I'm importing list.css, which is nothing but that. And in the list item, I do have more CSS. So this file, you can just copy and paste that file to get all that CSS. There's nothing particularly earth-shattering about it. It's just some formatting so I have a common look and feel for all the items in a list. Now my list.js is going to import list item. Right now it's just one item inside there, but we're going to loop through the data that gets passed down to list and build this series of list items using our map method. List item, we've got this sort of common format. I've got a data ref attribute inside the list item, and this is going to be displayed whatever I pass through as my ref property. Right here is going to be whatever I pass through as my title property, and this is going to be my text property. And we're also going to talk about the ability to come up with an action, so something that happens when you click on this list item. So we're going to talk about doing that too. Let's jump back up here to the top, and in our app.js, let's do a little bit of cleanup here. Thinking through this, so we've got terms. These are the search terms that we're talking about. And we don't need to have these default values inside of here. We know that that worked, so I'm going to remove those so that this list is going to be empty when the page first loads. And this value, whatever the first value in there, if we scroll down into our search bar, we can see terms number 0. So whatever's first in the array gets passed into the prop term, goes down to search bar. Inside of here, we're no longer using this as a piece of state, so I can delete that. I'm going to delete a bunch of the commented stuff here. We're not using changed focus clicked, so I'm going to remove all of that just to clean this up a little bit. Down inside of here, once we have that search term passed in, okay, yeah, these we removed, so we can remove those from the code just to clean this up. There we go. Now, props.term, this is the thing that we're passing down from app into here. So I'm going to save that just so it's updated. I'm going to save this one so it's updated. Number 0. If this doesn't exist, what's going to be passed in is undefined. Undefined, as long as terms is an array, this isn't going to cause an error. It's just going to say, hey, you've got nothing in the array. There is no item 0 inside your array. So we get undefined coming down. Now what we did originally was we made this into a ternary operator. I'm going to take this and remove it and just put it down here at the bottom as a comment. I want to show you a different way of writing this, something that's much more common than ternary operators. I always start like this, but when I'm actually building the site, what I do is this. We say props.term. This is the truthy or falsy value that we want to test. If this thing exists, I want to build some sort of DOM element, some sort of JSX object. So if you think about an if statement, you can have an AND inside of there, and if both things are true, then you proceed. If the first thing is false, JavaScript never looks at the second one. So we can do that in our expression here as well. That means this part right here, that is what we put here. And I don't need the question mark. I don't need the colon and the empty string to come afterwards. It's just this. If props.term, if that's a truthy thing, please render this. That's what we're doing. So there's one of our things that we're going to update here using this logical shortcutting, it's called, to render that. Now I've removed those extra things, the extra functions. I've removed the extra event listeners. We don't need those. I'm no longer using state here, so I can remove that. Okay, so there's search bar updated. App.js, we're still passing in this. Back up at the top, terms, we're good now. We've removed those defaults. Now, films. I'm going to change this variable name because right now we're just loading films. But in the future, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to search for films or people or planets. So when I type something in here, it's going to matter which one of these routes I'm looking at. We're going to get into routing very soon. But for now, I just want to plan ahead and say, okay, it's not really the film results that I'm getting here. It's search results. So I'm just going to create a variable called results. And set results is going to be my method. So we'll change this from films to results. And this is going to be set results. Default is going to be an empty array. And we'll come down here. Right now, fetch data is set to films. Well, I'm going to turn that into a variable, just sort of looking ahead as well. We're going to create something called, let's call it data type. And set data type. We're going to do this with routing, but for the moment, we'll do this. Set state, and the default value of this, we'll set it to films. Okay, so we have a state variable now, data type. We can use that. We don't have to pass it into here anymore. Don't have to pass it in here. We just use it right here as part of the path. So this is films. It's going to work. Set films is now going to be set results. There we go. Come down here, films, and we'll change this to be results. And results instead of film. So we have to go into search results and make sure that we're getting this from props. So search results.js. And inside props, we're looking for results, not films. Anywhere we see films. And instead of film, let's call this item. We're going to do some more updates in just a moment of this, but for now, I'll call it item, just to make it a little bit more generic. Okay, and we've got, well, actually, we can remove both of these useEffect. We're not using either of them to do any updating or re-rendering, so we can remove that and remove all this. Okay, so we're simplifying, getting simpler and simpler with our code. Back up here, yes, we're using the results, so we're a little bit more generic. We've got these 3 state variables now, so we're going to use those. Next thing I want to do, if we jump over to the browser, When somebody types something in here, so if I type in Jedi, for example, and I click the search button, we are doing this. We are adding it to that array. We are writing it here. This is being pushed back down as a prop, as the term, but we're not doing the search. We're not applying it to this. So that's what we need to do next. Right now, inside of fetch data, we're doing API/films. To add a search, if you go to the Star Wars API documentation, I think it's up here near the top. Searching, yeah. So you can search, example, they're saying people. You just have to add a question mark, search equals, and then the thing you're looking for. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add to this, if they provide us some sort of keyword, then we are going to say that URL is equal to what we had before, plus we want to say slash and then question mark search equals keyword. Keywords are a variable, and we're going to pass that in right here. So we need to pass it in when we call fetch data. Now, if we think of this in terms of how the page loads, initially we have nothing for our search results. It's an empty array. And that's when this gets called on initial render. Fetch data with no keyword. If this doesn't exist, it's undefined. So we're not going to add this onto there. There's not going to be any additional search. It's just whatever the default type is, which is films at the very beginning. It's not until after the person actually fills out a search term and clicks on the button, submits that form, that's when add term is called. This is referenced down inside the search bar component. So it calls this and it passes up the term that it's looking for. We put it at the start of this array. Well, what I can do at this point, I've got a couple of choices. One, I can call fetch data right here, and I can pass in whatever the term is. So now there is a term being passed a keyword, and that becomes what we're searching for. So that's version 1. I can do that, come over here, and if I search for Empire, there we go. And it did, and you saw this refreshed. We got a search done. So it was added into the terms, and then right here, that was the search results. If I search for the, there we go. Everything that's got the inside of it. So that's working, and that is one way. Another way that we can do this is we can watch for term to be updated, or sorry, terms rather, to be updated. And when terms is updated, so I could use useEffect here, and that way this gets updated, and when that process is complete of running the setTerms function, whenever that's done, then we trigger useEffect because this has been updated, and then that runs it. Now I can run the two things in parallel. That's okay. I'll show you the other one. I'm just going to comment this one out and show you the alternative, which is we can have another useEffect. Here's my function, and what am I tracking? It's terms. So when terms gets updated, at this point, I can take the variable terms and take the first thing from it and call fetch data. And terms number 0 is the one that's going to be passed. Something else in the use data that I didn't cover actually in the last video. You can return something from useEffect. If you return something, it's meant to be a function. And this is the function that runs at the end. So we can put this inside of here. This is called the cleanup function. It runs after your useEffect has been run. So here we have a function. Maybe there was an array that you generated to do something inside of your useEffect. Maybe you fetched some information and now you're done with it because this useEffect is done. And then you have the opportunity to clean up, delete some old data, empty something from local storage, whatever it is that you want to do. This gives you the opportunity to do that. Okay, so I've got the two ways of doing it. One directly inside of here with fetch data. I'm not dealing with terms. I'm dealing with term, which is what's passed in here. So I don't have to wait till this is done. But up to you. Either one is going to work. One other thing that I do want to update inside of here. Right now, I'm always putting this at the start, which is fine. The problem with it is, if I do the same search again and again and again and again, I could end up with something like this. I want to take whatever the most recent thing they typed was, say I type in Jedi again and hit enter. I want to add Jedi to the beginning of the array and then remove all the duplicates from here. So let's do that. So my new terms array is going to be a set. Set removes duplicates. So I'll take this, what I was doing right here. I'll take the old version of terms, split apart, put term in front of it, and then remove all the duplicates. Then I can come inside of here and pass new terms. That is the new array that's being passed in. Now this is a set, so to keep the data type standard, I will call array from. There we are. So array from new terms converts it from the set back into an array. So let's try this again now. We've got this reloaded. And I will search for Empire. And then I'll search for Jedi. And let's search for new. And then we'll search for Empire again. And there we are. So we don't duplicate Empire, we just move it to the front of the list. If it already existed, then it's stripped out inside the set. Okay, so that's a bit of cleanup, reorganization. Now the refactoring part, those list components. So let's do that. We have search results and search history. Both of these are going to use the list. So I'm passing down results into one, terms into the other, but both of them are arrays. Terms is an array, results is an array. I'm passing that down. So inside of search history and search results, I need to take whatever array gets passed in and convert it into something that is standard that I can pass to list, so list can handle it. Okay, so here's list. This is the one we're going to work with first. So let's start with search results. Inside of here, props.results. That's what we have right now. I'm going to take this and remove it. And I'll put it down here in the comments just so we can see it while we're working here. Instead of that, I'm going to build a div and I'll give it the class results. And inside of that is going to be a list component. I will need to pass to it the data that I want to use in search results. So list is going to get props. Inside of props, I'm going to have something called data. So I need to create a prop called data, and I'm going to put whatever gets passed into here, I'm going to extract results from that. Just going to use destructuring, make this easier. So from there, I'm going to extract props.results. Sorry, not data, but it is results. That's what we have coming down from app. Results is the array. So I have that, and I'm going to convert that into something that is formatted for list. Now, if we look at the list item that we had originally here, just the template version, there was three things. We need a ref, a title, and a text. Those three properties. So I want to make sure that I have those three properties coming down to list item. To build that, I have to get that to list so we can pass those things down. So our results, and this is going to vary a little bit depending on whether or not we're talking about a films object, a person object, a planet object, whatever it is that we're working with inside the API. So I'm going to take results, and we're going to say we're going to build, taking an item and the index, loop through here, and we're going to create a brand new object to put inside formatted data, and then that is what we pass down to list. List is going to be able to do this. Oh, and we need to import list. That's why we're getting the red squiggle there. There we are. We have our list component brought in. And we're going to loop through here. It's possible in the future for the list to maybe want to do something else. If you wanted to keep all the original data in addition to the formatted stuff, we could do something like this. Now, this isn't a necessity for what we're building, but just to say, if you want that original data, we can save that. So now we have an object that has all of this original data from the original array saved in there under this property original. Now, what I want to do is, depending on what kind of data it is it film, is it person, is it planet, based on whatever result set we're getting back, it's going to have different properties. So that's something else that we could pass in here, potentially. We could say, the type. Is this a film? Is it a planet? Is it a person? And we can do that right here from the apps, app.js. When we're passing it in, the results, the type, that is going to be our default one right here, this data type that we created. So using that, I will pass that data type, which is going to default to films. That gets passed into search results. Search results, we're going to extract it from props. And then inside of our function here, I'm going to do a switch case statement. So I will take the type. And if we're talking about films, I'm going to have a certain number of properties that I'm going to add. If we're talking about people, or if we're talking about planets. And we can keep going with the different types depending on what we had in our navigation there. So I've got these three things. Films is the only one that we're currently using, so I'm just going to fill that in. And what we're going to do, we'll have inside of the object that we just created here, I'm going to create a ref property. And I know that episode ID is something that we get in that Star Wars object that comes back. I'm going to get title. That is something in the film object. And my txt, we're going to get item dot, I'm going to say release year, just to have something to put inside of there. So we have our object that we create. We're adding some properties inside of here. I don't have a default case. We could make films. I'm just going to leave that out for now. And then we're going to say that we want to return our new object that we built. Okay. So our search results, we get the results array. We're going to turn it into this object. Formatted data is now an array of these objects. So it's got these four properties inside of it, ref, title, and txt. We're passing that down. Ref, title, txt are going into list. List is going to have those three properties inside the object. So we're going to be looping through props. Right here, props.data is what's being passed into list. So props.data is going to give us a series of list items. All right, so we're building our list item objects. whenever we're dealing with a map, remember we have to use a key, so I have to take something out of item. So I'm going to use ref, or I could use title, whichever one it is that I want. And then list item is looking for something inside of props to have these three things. So we're going to pass our object down into here, and let's call it data again. So inside of lists, we're going to create a property called data, and it will be the whole item, the object from this array. Now we've got data being passed down to list item. Inside of list item, we can say const data equals props. So we get props.data. Now we can use it down here. This is no longer going to be the string. It is now data.ref. The title right here is going to become data.title. And down here, data.txt. But let's think about what we're doing in the page. And you can see the CSS is being applied here. We could add a little bit more CSS in there. But inside of here, really all we have is the title. We don't have any additional text. So I'm going to want to have it be conditional whether there's some additional text here. It's going to be conditional whether there is some extra one. So we're going to make this one of those logical shortcutting situations. And we'll say, if data has txt, then I want to render this thing. And inside of here, what I want is data.txt. That's what's going to be inside there. Okay, so we have title, we've got text, we've got the data ref being passed in. Jump to the browser. So we've got the episode IDs here. Oh, we're not getting the text showing up. Let's check that out. Data.txt, did I misspell it? Or spell it differently? Item.release year, pretty sure that's what the film was. Double check. Oh, release date, that's what it was. So release date, not release year. That should fix our problem. There we go. So we've got episode ID, we've got the title, we've got the release year, all those things showing up. Great. We could probably use some margin above and below those boxes. So on the list item page, we got list item CSS. Jump into here. And list item itself, let's add some margin on the top and bottom just to create a little space. There we go. Okay, so these results are working out fine. Now I want to apply the same thing as I did in search results to generate our list and list item. I want to do that right here in history. So inside of search history, there we go. Back up into app, double check here what we're passing in. We're passing in terms. Great. So in search history, we've got terms, props.terms. So I can say terms from props. Now terms down here is what we're going to be looping through. And I will take this out just to save it as we're building the new stuff. For search history, I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, class name, and history is a class I have in the CSS. Inside of here, I want to build a list. And the list is going to have data being passed to it. And what is it? Well, it's going to be what we generate up here as our formatted data. and that's going to be terms.map. And inside of here, we have our item and our index. We need to build an object that we want to return. Now, I don't need to do a switch case statement. It's always going to be the history that's happening inside of here. So I know it's always just that title. We need to return an object. So there's our object, and it's going to have a property called ref, which will be our index. It's going to have a property called title, which is going to be the item itself. It's just the search term. And then txt, I can leave it blank, or just to be explicit here, I'm going to set it to null. So it's not there, there's nothing there, and data, formatted data is what we're passing down here into list. I get the red squiggle, I need to import it. And there we are. So we built our custom array, just generated this new object where we're sticking in, really it's just the search term, but we've got the index in there as well. So that should now have generated our search results, just like that. So now we have two lists using that same refactored component. So we've got search history and search results, both of them refactored and using that same common component. All right, so that's it for this video. I know that was a lot. We talked about a lot of different things, but it sort of, I'm hoping, shows you how we can walk through things and think about where we're going, what we're planning for, and think about where to reuse components, how to build things in a way that makes them reusable. All right, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. I'll answer as many as I have time for. Remember, the link to the GitHub repo is down inside the description. And as always, thanks for watching.